Yo guys, how's it going? AK Moto here. We are back in the shop and today we're going to be getting some work done here on the 250 right back here. Needs a little maintenance and we have a pretty good list of things we need to do to it today. So here I have a little to-do list right here. So we got to rebuild the front ends. We're going to grease all the pivots and bearings on the bike. We're going to replace both levers, the brake and the clutch lever. We're going to replace our grips because one of our grips is torn. We're gonna replace some scratched body panels. We're gonna torque up our spokes. We need to set our sag. We need to clean between our fork and fork dust seals, or fork seals and fork dust seals. And then we have to lube up our cables, and that should be pretty much it, most of the work. Now, if you guys saw my most recent video, I had a little crash at Cycle Ranch, but this is actually quite a few days later, I think a week or two later now. So yeah, I'm healing up fine. I'm doing all right, guys, just in case you guys are wondering. But yeah, the bike needs a little love. The front end is definitely pretty scratched up and we're going to be rebuilding it, realigning the forks, all that stuff, greasing everything, because I haven't gone through this bike and I haven't greased all the bearings yet and I want to just get some good grease in there so we know it's good to go. So yeah, we're going to do a lot of work to this bike today and yeah, let's just get started. We have a lot to do, not a lot of time to do it. So the bike's looking pretty good. Now we have a dent in this pipe that actually didn't happen at my most recent crash, but here is where the carnage really starts. It's not too bad, it's just a pretty scratched up front fender. And then our front number plate got a little messed up here behind here too. And my levers, especially my clutch lever, could use some greasing and replacing. So over here parts wise, we got some new fenders, new number plates. HRB's brand, I think they're okay fenders. I really wanted to keep the OEM plastics on there. I think OEM plastics are some of the best, most durable ones. But they are the most expensive, so I'm going to be going with the next best thing I know, some HRBs. Want to get some quality parts for this bike. We got some fresh grips over here. I'm going to be trying out these ODI lock-ons. I've actually never tried these grips, so I'm going to give those a shot so we don't have to mess with the grip glue. And then here we have our levers right down here, and then of course we have to grease up some stuff and just do a few other things, just setting sag and just dialing some stuff in on the bike. That I probably should have done a little earlier, but hey, now let's get it done. So the first thing we'll be getting started with is greasing the linkage, and we're also going to do the swing arm pivot since we've never greased it before. I think Yamaha's pretty good about greasing their bearings. I've never really had a bearing come out dry or anything, but we're going to re-grease it anyway just to make sure we get some nice, good quality grease in. Now I'm going to be trying out this new grease here. This is a Bel-Ray waterproof grease. Not sponsored or anything, but I've just been using this Maxima stuff for quite a little while. You see the tub's almost out. And it's an okay grease, but I want to give this Bel-Ray a shot, and this seems like another really popular grease out there. Seems a little thicker than the Maxima too, so we'll give it a shot. And to help things go a little quicker, I quickly went down and wrote down all the torque specs we will be needing. Of course, I'm not torquing down every single bolt I touch, but these are the important ones, and yeah, just to save a little time, I went through and wrote these down. Alright guys, so first things first, I'm going to be removing the rear wheel. Now if I was just greasing the linkage, I wouldn't have to remove the rear wheel, but because we're doing both the linkage and the swing arm pivot, I'm going to take it off just to make my life, you know, a little bit easier. Here we are using a big 30mm axle nut socket. This bike has a really big axle nut socket, or really big axle nut, so you need a big socket to remove it. Let's get started. Alright guys, so we are on the right side of the bike, and here I'm just going to loosen up these bolts. Not going to take them all the way out just yet. Alright, so as you guys can see behind me, the whole back end, or at least rear swing arm assembly of the bike is completely apart now. A little bit crazy because it's still a new bike, that's alright. So we got the rear swing arm all cleaned up. We greased up both the pivot bearings. Those didn't look too bad. Actually, all the bearings didn't look bad at all. They had a good amount of grease in them from the factory, but I wanted to make sure and pack a lot of good quality grease into those bearings. Some of the bearings definitely could use a little more grease, especially those swing arm pivot bearings. They definitely needed a little more, but pretty much everything else was good. All the bolts had grease on them, so nothing was gonna get seized in there. So overall, looks like Yamaha did a really good job greasing up this stuff from the factory, but it's still good to go in, put a nice quality grease in there, and make sure we really pack it in, just to have that peace of mind. So now that we have everything, all the bearings greased up, everything cleaned up real nice, we can go through and start putting some stuff back together. Let's do it. Alright guys, so we have our swing arm right here back into place. We threw in our swing arm pivot bolt back in, grease that up so it doesn't seize in the future. And we have this nut right here, and its torque spec is actually 63 foot-pounds or pound-feet of torque. Now I'm not gonna actually torque this down yet, so I'm just gonna snug it down here with the ratchet, and then we'll get to torquing it a little later on, and I'll show you guys what I'll be doing for that. Alright guys, so we pretty much got everything in place, but I left everything just snug. I didn't torque anything down yet. So now I'm going to put the bike on the ground under its own weight, and I'm going to torque everything. Alright guys, so we are all done greasing up our linkage bearings and our swing arm pivot bearings. Those are all good to go. I went through, tightened all the bolts to spec, and this is all good to go. Now it is time to move on to the front end of the bike, where we have to pretty much tear it all down. I'm going to be tearing the whole thing down so we can grease our steering stem pivot bearings, or our steering stem bearings. The bearings here in the triple clamps, I'm going to grease those up too, because we're already going through and greasing everything. So I'm pretty much going to do a full tear down of the front end, going to completely rebuild the front end, tear it all the way down to the clamps, and then just going to rebuild it with the fresh grease bearings. We have a new front fender to install, we have a new front number plate, we have new grips and levers to install, and I'm also going to lube up some cables and stuff, just do some miscellaneous stuff here and there. So let's get started. Hey guys, so quick update. So I have the handlebars off the bike. Whoa, it's kind of dark right here. I have the handlebars off the bike right now. I have the front end off pretty much. Well, I have the forks and the triple clamps on, but that's pretty much it. I have the front wheel off and whatnot. But it turns out my stock handlebars are actually bent. They're right back here. And what I did was I laid them down here on a flat surface, my workbench. And basically if one side's higher than the other, it'll tell you they're slightly twisted or bent. These ones are slightly bent. So I do need to order up some new ones, unfortunately, but that's all right. I'll get some on order, and yeah, the bike's just gonna have to kind of stay as it is for now, just for a little while, but that's all right. And I guess I'll just pick back up when we have some bars here. Now, because it is getting kind of close to Christmas time, shipping is gonna take forever. So yeah, let's see how long it takes for a set of handlebars to get here. So up to you guys. I'll be back when we get some bars in.